Welcome to Fearless Females, where ambition meets resilience. Meet your guide, Lorie Jones, president of Fidelis Wealth Advisors. Join her and remarkable women executives as they uncover the triumphs and transformative moments shaping extraordinary careers. Ready to be fearless? Let the journey begin.
Welcome to Fearless Females. I'm so excited you're joining us again. I'd like to give a shout out to our sponsor, Fidelis Wealth Advisors. I'm so grateful that they help me out with this so I can follow my passion. We're talking with Betty Sanders today. She is an amazing lady, and I was really inspired and uplifted by her journey. The thing that struck with me or stuck me the most about my interview with Betty is just her deep faith and belief. I think that as women, we come from all different places to join this journey together and learn so many new things along the way. And I loved listening to her story of faith and belief that things were going to be okay. Sometimes in this chaotic world, that's all that you need is a strong sense that life is going to work out. So join me today as I talk with Betty Sanders. Well, thank you for joining us today. We've got Betty Sanders. She's Vice President of Rocky Mountain Transload, and I'm so excited to get to chat with you today, Betty. Thank you so much for making the time. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you for having me.
So my first question is always the same. I am a reader. I love to read, and I'm always looking for good suggestions. Do you have a favorite book?
Well, I've recently gotten into a lot of Jonathan Cahn books, and he has a lot of, the one that I like was The Paradigm. I mean, he's got a lot of books talking about what's going on, in the world, and giving me a broader perspective, and probably a Christian-based look at it too.
Oh, that's interesting. I haven't even heard of that one, so I'll have to take a look and see. At Jonathan Cahn, you said?
Cahn. So he was a Jew, and then he's now converted. He's Christian. So
interesting. That must have been an interesting trek for him too.
Up his books, he has the Harbinger one. And he's got a bunch of books, and they're a really good read.
Well, I'll check it out. So trucking, Rocky Mountain Transload, I understand you do like the last mile or the last couple miles between I'll let you explain it. Betty, what do you do there?
So our company, what we do is we do the last mile. So we have sites that train cars come in, and for a train car it actually is one tractor trailer worth of stuff. So most of the stuff that we deal is aggregate. So it's bulk. So we've done frac sand, we do de-icer for the airport, we do malt barley for the brew companies that are around, we do plastic pellets. So anyway, they bring a train in, and then we have our own trucks, and then we load them into trailers, and then we take the product to the customer, because most customers do not have rail facilities. They don't have rail to their places, but they do have silos. So that's what we do. So that's the trucking and the transload kind of combined in our little niche.
How did you get on that journey? That's a pretty male-dominated industry right there. How'd you make it to trucking?
So my husband worked for an industrial minerals company. As you know, Colorado is they do a lot of fracking here, or they did for a while. It's slowed down a little bit, but it will pick back up again. So he used to go out and try to find people to set up sites so that they have a place to bring. They'd find the rail, and then they'd go find people to manage it. And he did that when he was single. And then when we got married, and then we decided we were going to have a family, then I said, well, why don't we do one of those? And he said, well, yeah, there's no reason why we can't. So he was in the right place at the right time. And then he asked if we could take over and do one. And they said yes. And this was 30 years ago. They actually gave us a loan of like $50,000 to get started, buy a truck and kind of get going. So he was his own first employee. And then I was going to be doing some of the billing and stuff for him. So, and then we ended up, it worked out really well because then we had children, and I was able to stay at the house and do the bookkeeping from there. And then eventually we got more sites, and we started doing different products other than just frac sand. And yeah, now we probably have about 45 employees that work for us now.
Uh-huh.
So, so it's been a blessing.
It got big quick, huh?
Get big, yeah.
How did you ever drive a truck?
I've been in them, but no, I haven't driven them. But I could if I wanted to. Right now, before when they first did trucks, they were all, 16 gears. Now most of the trucks that we get, they're all automatic. So if I want to drive around the yard, if you can't really go out on the road unless you have a CDL, but if I wanted to drive around our yard, I could do that. But the trucks have changed a lot.
Oh, I'm so fascinated. Those things are so big. I can barely drive my teeny little car and manage not to hit things. So I'm always fascinated.
Yeah.
So what do you think, looking back on your journey, is there an investment that you made in yourself that really kind of led to your success, or that you were like, oh, I'm so glad I did that?
Well, with starting your own business, there's always a lot of ups and downs and uncertainty. So I've made it a point to, one, it's not only just mentally trying to figure out what to do, but spiritually too, and also physically. So you have to kind of realize that you've got all these pieces and you need to take care of everything. So, when the uncertainty comes, then I'm in the spiritual stuff. But you know what? I got to get my body keep going. So I really should have exercise or some sort of routine to keep my body going, especially now that I'm older. If you don't use it, you lose it. And so you better move it, right? So that always has helped. I would just say, just try to be balanced. It's not all about the work. And if you pray about it, that'll provide. That's one key.
That was the word I was thinking of, was balance, when you were talking about that. That's really, really hard to do, especially in today's world. It's really fast paced. And a lot of times they reward you for overwork and out of balance lives. So how do you keep that balance?
Well, when you're your own boss, you have a little more control over it. And then when you get kids, as trying to be a mom, you always want to give, but you can't give unless you're full yourself. So you really have to try to figure out whether or not you have to get up earlier in the morning, before the kids. We used to do that a lot before the kids got up or got out the door, just to try to fit that all in. And you know what? I think your family will respect that once they realize you've made it a priority for yourself.
Mm-hmm. That they kind of try and help out.
Yeah.
So what is the worst advice someone ever gave you on this journey? And did you take it?
Yeah, just to wing it, you just, yeah, it's kind of hard to just let things roll. I mean, it's easier, I think, if you have a plan, and something happen. But I just think, for me, I just let God guide. I pray about everything. And not everybody believes that works for them, but it does for me. And if I just trust that God's going to put me in the right place at the right time, and things will work out. And that's another thing. If you're spiritually connected, you have hope and you don't fear. And those are good qualities to have, especially if you've got kids, right? You're trying to teach them. It is a scary world out there right now. There is a lot of evil and bad things going on, but you just got to trust that you're protected and you'll be guided, and He'll direct you. And if you ask, you have to ask. You can't just expect, because it just doesn't happen unless you're willing to put the time in that too also.
So how would you say you came up with the plan, though? You said you need to have a plan. How did you get the plan in the first place?
Well, see, so when my husband he was going to be doing a facility, I mean, we had a product, right, that we were moving, and there was a need for it. But then he was like, okay, well, we can't just rely on oil and gas, right? It's oil and gas related, fracking, right? So he's like, we need to diversify. So now what other products can we do? So you just kind of expand off of what you've already got started. That will actually would be an easy bring alongside of what you're doing, and realize that there is a chance for the ups and the downs. And so what we ended up, he said, all right, well, then we need to find another facility that has rail, because that's what we do. And we can't transload if we don't have a place where the trains come into. And so then he's like, all right, well, what other products? Well, when he was looking at facilities, this other facility did malt barley. And malt barley is used in making beer. Well, there's a lot of places in Colorado that do all these brew places. So we're like, all right, well then, maybe that would be worth doing. And this other customer, so we bought an existing business to bring alongside of what we had started with the sand. And that just kind of, then from there, they also did plastic pellets, which I didn't know what plastic pellets were used for. And so you learn along the way. And the bags that you put your flowers in at the grocery store, those plastic bags, those are made from plastic pellet. And then also, your packing tape, like when you want to do the clear tape to close up a box that you're going to ship out, that's new. Yeah, I mean, there's just different, you're like, what? And I'm like, yeah, I didn't know that either, right? So that's kind of how you kind of try to build off of what you know and what will fit into your wheelhouse.
So did you come up with these ideas before they were needed? Or was it like there was a problem and you were like, hey, we see this coming down the pike, we got to make a change? Like, proactive planning is so unusual.
Yeah, well, what ended up happening is when we first started, we started in January. January 19th was our anniversary for 30 years. We ended up, the first 2 months did really well. And then as it happens, and it's kind of right now, the oil and gas industry kind of went in the toilet. So we're like, oh, now what are we going to do? Right? So then that's kind of when you're like, you're either going to do it or you got to do something else. That's where we really realized we can't rely on one commodity, because that's what we do. We do a lot of aggregate stuff. We move a lot of aggregate. So we're like, okay, because there's cycles. That's even like we do de-icer for the airport. Well, right now is a good time because it's winter, but if we don't get any snow, it doesn't move. So that's kind of where you kind of build, knowing that something's not always forever.
Yeah. It's interesting that you guys are able to pivot. Was that because you were a small business that you were able to pivot so well, or just because it sounds like you've got a lot of curiosity and think?
When you're the boss, it's just my husband and I that own the business. You can easily, you don't have all the red tape, right? If you're in a big corporation. So we can kind of say, yeah, we think that's worth it. I mean, we ended up, when we first started, we had to use our home equity loan on our house to keep going when the oil and gas industry went to the toilet. And we're like, what the heck are we doing? But we trusted the plan, right? So, and then eventually it turned around. And then we were able to, hire somebody else to help my husband, because he was actually doing the physical work too, and we were living in Littleton at that time. I just had a baby, and he was driving all the way up to like Brighton every day to do work, so he'd leave at like 6:00 in the morning. I wouldn't see him till 7, 8 o'clock at night. So at first, when you start, it's rough, but then you get a little smarter along the way, and you try to be a little more proactive in it, because you don't want to be working like that forever.
That must have been scary, taking out a home equity loan.
Yeah, but in what we were doing there, we saw that there was a need to do it, and that as long as you can see that eventually there's an end user, then you don't mind taking a little bit more of a risk, because you know that eventually it will pay off. And if you don't take the risk, you don't get the reward. You have to be willing to take a little bit of a risk. Now, I'm not saying you have to, go into foreclosure or anything, but, if it had gotten to the point where it wasn't really gonna, the industry wasn't gonna turn around, then we would have been like, hey, by the way, in fact, it was so funny, when it did go in the toilet, my husband tried selling funeral plans alongside trying to, why it was all like nothing was going on. Oh my gosh. And I was selling Pampered Chef and I could go out at night. If he'd come home, I could go out at night. And that was 30 years ago. Pampered Chef was pretty popular. So we did that. I mean, you just do whatever you got to do at the time.
Yeah, that's interesting. What about regrets? Do you have a situation as you look back on it where you really wish you would have done it differently? And did you learn something?
Yeah. I mean, I would say the only regret to being in business with your spouse is that it's always about like work. It's kind of hard to turn it off. And then if you end up in a situation where you brought somebody in to help with the business, but then they're not respectful of one of you, it could cause turmoil. So yeah, I would say, I mean, it was great because I was raising the kids and stuff like that, but working with your husband and being with them 100% of the time and trying to do both, yeah, kind of kills the romance a little bit. So that makes it hard. I think, I mean, it worked out, but it's still, I might have tried to do something a little bit, once it got going to step out and let him just take it,
So I was just going to ask, any tips, tricks, hints for working with a spouse? Because, when you start these small businesses, it really is a family affair. You're all in all the time.
Well, and the funny part too is sometimes you have to agree to disagree. You don't always see everything exactly the same. And, stronger females too, we kind of get, put our blinders on and this is the way we're doing it. And that's the way it is. And sometimes with the guys, you can't run them over, because if you run them over like that, yeah, then they're not very affectionate. And you kind of have to be still nice about it.
Absolutely. I am of the opinion you can be fearless and nice at the same time.
Yeah. Takes a lot of prayer sometimes to be nice, because sometimes you don't want to be.
So if you could go back to your younger self when you first started out and give her some advice, what would you say?
Oh, what would I say? I would say just take one day at a time is all you can. That's all you possibly can do as far as what to expect that you can get accomplished. I know you still really need to plan, but yeah, just pray about everything, and it'll, whatever's supposed to happen, you have to believe it'll come. If it was meant for you, it'll come. But yeah, being in business for yourself sometimes is a really hard road. That's why a lot of people work for other people, because then they can go 9 to 5 and leave it. But being in business for yourself, it doesn't end, right? It's always in the back of your mind, because you have control over it. So yeah.
Would you take that path again? Would you go into business for yourself? Or are the rewards worth it?
I've been blessed. We were able to. Yeah, I would, because now on the other side, I mean, I've been through some rough roads, with the relationship with my husband. But now that my kids are older and the business is older and we've got people, I have been able to step back quite a bit and let him, love on it. Yeah, because there's a lot of reward in being self-employed. Like, we have a beautiful home. We were able to send both of our girls through college and pay for it, so they were debt free. The rewards are, because we could do 529 plans. I mean, I would suggest that for your kids if you got any. Yeah, because that all, that was the way we did it. I mean, both my husband and I, we grew up in, average, regular families. My dad was a blue collar worker. His dad was a farmer. So nobody gave us anything. Everything we have accomplished was on our own. Right? So we know what it's like to work for it. Our kids, on the other hand, boy, they got a silver spoon in their mouth compared to you know what I'm saying? I mean, so you want to do that for your kids, but then you have to be careful too, that you don't give them too much. Like I said, my older daughter, she's 31 now, and she's going to be taking over the business so we can retire, because my husband, he is going to be 68. Right. And I'm 63. But, but it's time. It's time, right? And so that in itself is a blessing. And my daughter actually has a medical. She's she was a nurse and a nurse manager. She had her master's and just decided that she didn't want to be on call 24/7 and didn't want to have to deal with when people call off and they don't show up to work and try, because she was on the phone even on the weekends, where a blessing with us is you don't have to worry about filling schedules and you can have a weekend to yourself with not being on call 24/7. So yeah, because that was really kind of fun. Was we thought for a while we wanted to sell the business and it never really happened. And we're like, what's going on? I've been praying about this. How come it's not selling? And my answer was no. So, and then you have to realize sometimes your answers are no. And now look at it, 8 years later, my daughter's going to do it. And it's going to be a great lifestyle for them. And I really think she can take it to the next level.
Mm-hmm.
We've learned a lot about people, having the right people in the right places. I would say that's a big thing too. If you're going to get help, make sure that they're the right fit. If they're not the right fit, they can cause a lot of damage.
How do you find the right fit?
That is a good question. Trial and error. Yeah, it's all about your personalities too, I think. If the personality fits into the culture of what you're trying to promote. I mean, we're a very honest company. I mean, there's a lot of businesses where you can, if you pay somebody under the table or whatever, you can get, we never did it that way. That was not who we were. And that was not anything I wanted to compromise. So you can use headhunters. We've used, Indeed, and we've used headhunters, but I think after a while you make a few mistakes, you realize they're not working. And the other thing is when you've made a mistake and you realize it's not the right person to help, then you better get them out of there because they can poison the other people that are already working for you. We try to treat our people right. We give bonuses even when we probably shouldn't. Want them to realize that we appreciate what they do for us. I mean, especially like the guys that are actually unloading the trains and unloading the trucks, and they're in the day-to-day dirt. And then, you know what? They really appreciate it. We're probably still considered a mom and pop business. I mean, we're not Fortune 500 or whatever because we only got like 45 people. But you know what? It's been enough. And my husband will go, how come we didn't get any bigger? I'm like, you know what? It's okay because we're doing we're okay. I don't have to be Microsoft. I don't have to be that big. Do you know what I'm saying? So You have to do that. Maybe you're only going to be mid-size. Maybe you're only meant to be small. But if you can make a living and control your own life because you are in charge and you can make your own schedule and you don't have people screaming at you because you're not doing it right, that's worth a lot. And it might not be the dollars. I mean, you have the realization you still need to make money in order to survive.
That maybe that gives you a little bit more life satisfaction and leads to that balance you're talking about. Maybe you give up a little bit on the revenue side in order to have the quality of life that you want.
Yeah. And then you have to realize too, and I mentioned this to you before, but my sister is also in self-employed but she's in Florida and they're in construction. And it's so funny. I'm like, so when you first start, it's like every $10 makes a big difference. And next thing you know, it's every $100 makes a big difference. And then the next thing, as you keep going, it's every $1,000. So your numbers, so when you're in the $1,000 range, if you have to spend 10 or 100, it's not as crucial. And then next thing you know, you go to the 10,000. And then next thing it's 100,000. So as your numbers get bigger, the little ones don't seem as big of a deal to pay or whatever you've got to do. And it's so funny because, I was in the $100,000 range and my sister's in the $100 range. And I'm just like, just wait, it will come. And about 5 years later, she goes, you're right, it did. So if you're, in a business where it's something that has growing potential, it will happen, as you learned. And the other thing too is don't spend every dollar you make because you have to make payroll. So don't be over aggressive on the growth if you don't have the cash or you can't get the loan or, you have to realize you can't spend it all. You have to have a rainy day fund.
Yeah, cash flow issues. In what I do with financial planning, when you're looking at business, cash flow issues sometimes sink a ship faster than anything else.
Yeah. So I always know I at least have enough to make payroll, a couple times, or I at least can get my hands on it. Because that's the other thing, too. If you can't make payroll, your people aren't going to stay.
Yeah. And then you lose all that talent that you've spent the time working and growing.
Yeah, and it's better to keep somebody who's very good than to get somebody cheaper and try to train them up because it takes a while for them to get to where the other person was, and so you've lost all that time.
So, Betty, in your career, have you faced any unique challenges because of your gender, because you were a woman?
I never went out and did like the sales piece of it. I was more in the back office, handling the money, just helping with policies and procedures. I mean, just starting, we're in like the blue collar worker people. You would think that you wouldn't have to make policies and procedures on even dumb stuff. But I mean, we even had to put in, because people showed up, policy and procedures that the women had to wear bras to work. I mean, yeah, it's just kind of crazy. But yeah, you just kind of learn to roll with it. But yeah, I never really had to deal with the men in it. You're right, because most of our transloaders are men. Though truck drivers, we'd love to have more women truck drivers. And you know what? They can make decent money. Most of our loads are local, so it's not over the road, like you're never home kind of stuff. So yeah, we've had women truck drivers, but there's not a whole lot of them. Yeah, but most of the office work is done by females, and then the outside stuff is done by males. We started a repair shop for our own trucks. That's kind of where we're at now, repairing our own equipment, and now we're also reaching out and telling other companies we can repair your trucks because we have qualified mechanics. And then we just started a new service truck that will go to other, like if somebody's broke down somewhere, that it has the stuff on it. So yeah, but that's okay. I don't really want to unload a truck when it's 20 degrees.
Yeah, I do. I like my spreadsheets and the warm inside. My dad actually said that he was a construction worker for a long time and built homes. And he said that's how come he got an engineering degree, is because he was tired of the winter time out there pounding nails.
Yeah. In Colorado, we get cold. I mean, it gets nice, but it's probably better than Chicago, right? Where it stays cold for a really long time.
Yeah. So, Betty, what is the thing you're most proud of through this journey?
I would say I'm most proud that, I was able to work from home. I was able to stay home with my kids. So it is worth being self-employed if you have that opportunity, because with the flexibility, I didn't feel like I was missing out. I was still able to go to Bible study and do stuff because I had the time, right? I could make my own schedule. I'm really proud that, we have been successful and we're as big as we're supposed to be. And in accepting that. But yeah, we don't really want for anything. Yeah, I would say that the payoff is worth the risk.
Any advice for someone who's just starting down their path so that they can succeed and be successful like you?
It's something that you already have a talent in or something that you really want to do. Just look at if it's something where is it only just you, or is it something that you can eventually have other people help you do that you could grow? Because if it's just you forever, you're going to get wore out. And just if you pick something that you kind of like or you already know, then it doesn't really seem like it's work all the time.
Yeah. And I like the idea of, I love my job. So I like the idea of doing something that you're passionate about or that you are excited about doing.
Pretty much you have to enjoy the journey. You have to realize you start out small and it can eventually grow. But don't expect to be, a millionaire in 2 days. It just doesn't, And then, like I told you before, be careful with the funds. You're bringing other people on. You can have great plans. We've done that where we've done 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, 10-year goals. That's worth filling out because at least if you have some goals, then you can when you get to year 3, you can look back at year 1 and say, wow, I got all that done. That was, and at the time when I put them down there, I thought that there was no way it was going to happen. You know what I mean? And then you get to year 5 and you look back at 3 and you're like, I did make progress. So I think that's important to do too, is just make realistic goals. But then when you start to get out to, 10 years, go for it. Put it out there because you never know. It can happen.
Big, crazy goals. Any advice for getting through those scary lean times, the ones where you're not sure you're going to make it?
Well, hopefully you did some pre-planning and you have a little bit of funding before you get started, whether it's a loan or we did a home equity. We had to live on that for a little while. But I would say pray along the way. I mean, if it's really something that you're supposed to be doing, God will guide you to make the right choices. And I spend a lot of time praying. There's another book. There's Jesus Calling books too for those that do have faith. That's a daily devotional that I really love and has helped me along the way. So for any of those that are interested in that, that's a great place to start.
Well, Betty, it's just been wonderful chatting with you today. Thank you so much for your time. If they want to know more about you or what you do, where can they go? Where can they find out?
We actually have a website. So it's rmtcompanies.com. They can reach me. So I'm just bsanders@rmtcompanies.com.
Yeah.
So if they want to see what we actually do, they can just pop around on that.
Well, thank you for spending some time with us today. I really appreciate it.
All right. Well, thank you. And I hope that this is a blessing to some people and that they've learned something.
All right.